Wabash Carnegie Public Library Oral History Program, interviewing C. Glen Coolman, 160 Highland Drive, Wabash, Indiana, interview taking place at the Wabash Junior High Athletic Department office, Wednesday, January the 23rd, 1974. Glenn, the first thing that I'm going to ask you is we'll just talk in normal conversation tone here. And the first question that I'm going to ask you is, first of all, give me your full name.
C. Glen Coolman.
What's the C stand for?
Charles.
Charles. And where were you born?
I was born near Bluffton.
Near Bluffton. And let's see how we... Glenn, what were your parents' names?
D.H. Coolman, Mr. and Mrs. D.H. Coolman.
And what was your mother's maiden name?
Mossberg, Elizabeth Mossberg.
Yeah. And what was their background?
My father was a one-room school teacher. And my mother was just a homemaker.
Yeah. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I had one brother, Edward, and another one, Harry.
Are they both still living, Glenn?
No, they're both gone.
Yeah. Where did you fit in the family picture?
I was the third boy.
The third boy. Do you remember anything of your grandparents, either on your father's side or your mother's side?
No, I never knew them.
On either side, they were
No,
both gone before you came along. Well, tell me about going to your own personal educational career, grade school, high school, college, and
I graduated from Bluffton High School.
Year?
1917.
Right, go ahead.
And then I attended summer terms in college at the start, and I started teaching when I was 17 years old.
What was the background on that?
I taught the 6th grade in Bluffton, Indiana.
Why? What was the reason? That you didn't need formal training to teach?
At that time, all you needed was 12 weeks training to start.
Uh-huh. So you started school right away?
That's right.
Yeah. Did you pursue your education then, Glenn?
Yes, through extension classes and summer terms.
Yeah. And got a degree eventually?
Right. Yeah.
From?
Ball State.
Ball State. And what year would that have been?
Oh, probably about 1926.
Yeah. And then what did you do?
Well, I taught in Bluffton for 2 years. Then I became a basketball coach at Converse, Indiana.
Uh-huh.
And I coached there for 3 years. Then I returned to Bluffton, which I had promised them to do when I left there. As I left there with a contract, and I promised that I would return sometime, and so they gave me a call and held me to my promise.
Mm-hmm. And then you went to Bluffton as coach at the high school?
That's right.
Yeah. And what were the circumstances? And
then I came to Wabash in 1925.
Yeah. Why?
Well, it's a little bigger town, and Bluffton was having quite a recession at that time because of bank failure and the King Piano Factory going out, and I thought there's more opportunity in Wabash.
Mm-hmm. Were you married then, Glenn, when you came?
No, I wasn't married. I wasn't married till 1929.
1929. Can you remember some of your early basketball teams and so forth at Converse and at Bluffton and anything?
Yes, I do.
First of all, let's remember you and I are talking, and let's say that someone 50 years from now is listening to this tape or reading this. Explain how the game of basketball was when you went into coaching and so forth.
When I was in Bluffton, I was 17 and 18 years old, and I coached the B team. And then I went to Converse, inheriting probably the best material I ever had. And we played 41 games that year and won 36 of them. Mm-hmm. And the highlight of the whole year was beating Marion. We had won 16 straight, Marion won 14 straight, and we defeated them before 4,400 people. And it was a stall game, and I believe that we had one player made all of our points, 19. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a believe it or not. I don't think anyone has ever made all the points in a game played before 4,400 people.
Mm-hmm.
Converse is a basketball heaven as far as coaching is concerned, which has gone into Oak Hill now, and there's always probably won more games than any town in the state of Indiana. The game, of course, then was a little bit different with the center jump, which cut down on the scoring some. The ball itself has so changed that the shooting percentages are much better. The ball was lopsided, and it was hard to shoot in those days. Now it's perfect. Much more emphasis was put on defense than there is now, and of course the one-handed shot was not used.
Was the ball, was that an out-seam or was that an in-seam ball?
It was the in-seam ball. The out-seam ball was used for the boys to practice outside.
Do you remember any outstanding players that you had in the early days of coaching?
Yes, I had probably the greatest player I ever had, a young man by the name of Dwight Nickham. He weighed 182 pounds, 6'1", and could run 100 in about 10.5.
Did you play against any outstanding players during that era?
Well, we were coming into the era of the Marion Giants. They were being formed at that time, which is one of the great all-time teams in this area. Stretch Murphy and Overman and Chapman boys. Yes, basketball was taken pretty seriously then. We had sellouts every night. In fact, we were sold out before the game started, most every game.
Where did Converse play their games?
Well, at that time, they had remodeled an old church. A pretty good place to play.
Was the size of the court or any obstacles in the floor? Or
No.
No.
Although we played in all kinds of places. We played in garages and upstairs rooms where there'd be posts down the middle. And old churches, many of them are remodeled to make a gymnasium. Sometimes we played in the basement and a real low ceiling. So we had all kinds of places to play.
Do you ever suspect that the baskets were not the regulation height? And
Could have been, I imagine, although 10 feet has been standard. Another favorite place to play was livery barns. They'd run the buggies out, and they'd have a place and get pretty dusty before the game was over. Sometimes they'd have to stop and sprinkle it.
That was just a dirt floor?
Dirt floor.
Yeah. And what would a typical score have been in those days?
Well, of course, as I said, they emphasized defense, and the scoring was low. Be many games, the scoring wouldn't get out of the teens. Would be 18 to 12 or 17 to 13.
How many referees did they use in those days?
One.
One referee. Was there anything that is completely foreign to what a person would know as Indiana basketball today?
Well, of course, the players bought their own suits and sometimes chipped in to buy the basketballs, and which I think is a pretty good thing, really. We give everybody so much now that I don't think they appreciate it as much as the boys did then. Of course, I thought it was quite an honor to be on the team, and you were recognized in the school more so than now, because the school has so many activities and so many stars and many departments that being a basketball player doesn't mean what it used to be.
Yeah. When you went back to Bluffton, then, what kind of a team did you inherit?
Well, when I went back to Bluffton, I coached A-team ball, and I had good teams. They won about 60% of the games.
How many years did you pursue this?
Let's see, I think when I went back to Bluffton, it must have been 3 years more.
And then you came to Wabash?
Came to Wabash, that's right.
The year was 1927, did you say?
No, 25, I think.
25. And who was the superintendent then?
Superintendent of schools was O.J. Neighbors, who was here many, many years.
And what was your position then when you came to the Wabash?
When I came, I taught in the industrial arts department, coached basketball and tennis.
What basketball were you coaching? Varsity? Or?
Varsity basketball. I coached all of them. I had the the varsity, the B's, the freshmen, 8th grade and 7th grade in the elementary. And I would start practicing in the evening at 3:30 and would finish up about 9 o'clock at night, and then Saturdays I'd give my time to the elementary.
Yeah. Well, what kind of teams did you have in Wabash then?
Wabash was really down. They didn't have a decent gymnasium. They played downtown, and the coach who had been coaching them would fine coach, but he coached football, wrestling, and basketball at the same time, and track, and so he was overloaded and had to limit his basketball practice 2 times a week. So basketball was just really down. And of course, at that time, we had a wonderful group of athletes in Wabash who were good sized, good boys, and they all came out for basketball, but they'd had so little experience that we won just 52% of our games the first year. Well, I had to make a decision. One thing, I couldn't go on and on because material was so I told Mr. Neighbors that I would direct the basketball program and take everything but the A team, and if he'd let me choose the A team coach. And he agreed to that, and so I took over everything but the A team, and I recommended Raymond Struck, Dutch Struck, to come in and coach the A team. And we went along like that for 10 years.
What kind of money did you make in those days, Glenn?
Well, we didn't make much. I guess we got about $100 extra for coaching, and now it pays around $2,000. Yeah. And I actually came into Wabash. I believe I made $1,600, and then I was advanced to $1,900, and then I was dropped to $1,000.
During the Depression?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Were you ever in fear of your job due to poor winning season or anything like that?
I've been fortunate in that respect. I've had 2,200 and some games and won about 70% of them. So as far as that was concerned, there's never any. I've had wonderful people to work with. I've never had a bad telephone call, or I've never had a bad letter, or never had anybody to come to me angry, summer or winter. But I'm sure that many of them felt like it. And I'll be the last one to say that that they were all pleased, but they didn't have the courage, or it wasn't strong enough that they came to me about it.
Running over in your mind, who were the, as you would consider, super athletes that you've coached here at Wabash High School over the years?
Well, I have a list here of, you probably got this same list of school board meeting at, I expect.
No.
Wabash High School, am I right?
Yes.
Wabash High School has produced some very fine athletes. Unfortunately, one of the great all-time athletes just passed away this week, Lawrence Marks.
Was he really good, Glenn?
Lawrence was about 190 pounds, 6'1" or 2", very fast. He was really a great athlete. I would say that he was probably the greatest Wabash High School has ever had.
Of all the athletes you've ever seen, you'd say Lawrence Marks was absolutely the greatest. Yeah.
He played with Indiana University. He played professional football. He had a number of state records. And not only was he a great athlete, but he was a very fine person. Wabash was blessed with some big boys in the early 20s. I wasn't coaching here then, but we were playing against them. Stu Butler and Larry Marks, Ken Field, Bill Wilson, Homer Nee, were all very fine athletes. Coming into my time, Probably the greatest athlete that we had was George Ross. George was absolutely great in football, fairly good in basketball, fantastic in football, or wrestling. He would draw 1,000 people to a wrestling match. And when George took the mat, it wasn't long till the fellow was down. They usually lasted less than a minute. He threw them in all kinds of directions. We had a very good football team when I first came here. Boys like Don Bowlby, Jesse Ferguson, Bob Jones, who were really great. Bob Jones, of course, was one of our great big boys, played for Indiana University, played at the Green Bay Packers. Another fine athlete that we had was Al Plummer. Al played at the University of Michigan. He was captain of the team there, made it as a sophomore.
That's basketball.
That's basketball, and he's also a good football player. Jumping then to our first team to go to the state tournament down in Indianapolis. First and only team. And of course we had at that time, some very fine boys. And fortunately we had really a great center, 6'5", very accurate, could shoot 25 free throws, blindfolded, straight. He could, one of the best pivot shooters I've ever seen. In the state that year, he was second all-state center to Johnny Townsend. John McNaughton. John went on to Northwestern to school. Another great player on that team was Lawrence Leland. Lawrence has a fabulous job now as vice president of one of the 10 largest insurance companies in the United States. He lives in Montpelier, Vermont. He is probably the greatest success story of any boy we had here, as he came up in a depression and was very limited on what he had to go to school on. We had Bill Sands, Bill Milner were on the team, Junior Van Horn, Al Rudy. They were a great bunch of boys, just lost 2 games in the entire year. Following that, we were blessed with the Yarnell Twins. The Yarnell Twins played all sports for 4 years. They won 89 5/10% of every game they ever played in. They were on quite a few undefeated teams. They won 28 straight tennis matches. Their football, they just lost 2 or 3 games in their careers. Basketball, just 4 or 5 games in their career. They were dreams to coach. They were very fine sportsmen, big, talented, and you just couldn't think of anyone better to have on your basketball team than the Yarnell Twins. They hold a lot of respect for people who are aware of the 1935, 36, and 37 teams. Another good player at that time was Bill Milner. Bill was later a coach, very successful, and won at Elkhart, Indiana. Bill played basketball at Manchester College, and he was a real strong individual. We have our own Gene Stoops, who was one of the better centers that we ever had in Wabash High School, especially defensive, and a very fine football player, played at DePaul University. Then we came along with a group of boys, Sam Slimmer, Charles Showalter, Dick Logan, Bud McClintock. All of them played college football, very strong both in football and basketball. We had another Boy, the Bowlby family furnished us a lot of fine football players. Byrne, Don, and the last one we had was Damon. Damon was all-state, picked as all-state center. He went on to Purdue to play, but injured his knee and wasn't able to finish out his career at Purdue. Pete Risch was one of our good quarterbacks here in Wabash High School. He was a worker, a real good passer. Pete played at Manchester College and Defiance College after finishing high school. Rex Anderson was one of our all-time greats. Rex, present time, holds a record of the most points in a track meet. He played football and basketball at Earlham College and later became coach there. He was an all-around athlete. He could play every sport well. Rex is now teaching at Howe High School of Indianapolis. Kenny Bridegroom and Ed Grable and Bob Miller were all very fine players.
Is that Miller or Milner, the last one?
Miller.
Miller.
Bob Miller.
Miller.
That's right.
Yeah.
Joe Weaver moved here from Martinsville and made us a fine basketball player and football player. Joe did not go to college. Then we came into another run. You know, these basketball teams kind of go in runs. You have them for 2 or 3 years, and they're gone, and you have to do it all over again. We had a great bunch of boys here, but led by John Rockwell, Stanley Ford, Tom Bowman, John Smith, Tito Miller, who were very, very outstanding. John Rockwell certainly could be classed up there with McNaughton as one of the good basketball players. John played here, played for Harvard University for 3 years, was captain of the team there. He also was offered a contract with the Minneapolis Lakers, but chose to continue on his scholarship for the Harvard Business School. Is now one of the great advertising executives in the United States. Stan Ford was an outstanding guard who is now a superintendent of the Ford meter box. Tom Bowman, son of Mr. and Mrs. Glen Bowman, was an outstanding player, had 3 outstanding years at Tulane University. He now living in Denver. Tom also did play professional basketball with the Zollner Pistons at Fort Wayne. Jim Jones is a member of that team. Jim has had a great athletic career. He was a star player in football and basketball at Earlham. He coached in Wabash for a few years. He went to Logan Sports as basketball coach, resigned his position and coached Indiana Extension over at Kokomo, and now he's back at Logan Sport as athletic director and doing a real fine job. This group of boys were very outstanding. Of course, won their sectionals, and I would say probably won 90% of their bowl games. Then we went on to another group of boys headed by Don Bear, and they won their tournament. I coached this team. Don Bear, Don Tite, Bob Fullwider, Don Winterode, Harold Farthing, Darrell Cassidy. Were the strong ones of this team. We won our sectional. We had 2 sensational games. One of them was against Whitco. We had a triple overtime, and we were ahead just one time when Don Winterode scored a basket in the last 5 seconds. The next night we played North Manchester. We were 11 points behind. We came back. We were ahead just once on a last-second field goal by Don Winterode, the same person who had won the game the night before. We were defeated at Kokomo 56-54 in a regional tourney. Then we came in with an outstanding group of boys who won 37 straight games. They were never behind the first half. In fact, I never took them down to the dressing room at the halftime. We just sit on the bench or shoot if they wanted to. It was never necessary. This group of boys had probably the outstanding record of any group. In their whole school career, they only lost about 7 or 8 games. As Dr. Bob Mattern, Neil Barnhart, Dwayne DeVault, Gene Miller, Bob Eckwright. Those boys were coaches' dreams. Then following along with that came into the Hipsher, Dieter, Kenny Miller era, and J.D. Miller. What's the other Miller's boy's name?
Was that Evan?
Scott Miller, J.D. Miller.
Yeah, okay.
Who had a very fine record. Now they came in under Jim Jones as a coach. They won their sectionals. They won 1 regional. About that time, I left Wabash for 12 years for Culver Military Academy.
Okay, we'll just continue where we were.
And Mr. Jones left Wabash for Logansport, and he was succeeded by Bill Peden. Bill came in and won his sectional his first year. Then they lost 2 or 3 sectionals, and Bill resigned and was followed by Herb Hera. Herb won 1 sectional, and then he resigned in 1964. At that time, a clean sweep was made of all coaches, and I came back from Culver to Wabash. Bob Shawn was hired as basketball coach. Paul Gunderman was hired as football coach. We started again. We had some very fine boys to work with. Outstanding among those boys was Bill Cantrell and Gary Holly. We started right off and had a real good season in basketball. Came in with a great deal of height, which was a big help. Won our sectional and showed up well in the regional. And we were, as I said, we were blessed with tall boys here. And then in football, we had some real fine boys. Won the conference. Steve Murphy was one of our all-time greats in football. He was a quarterback, 6'4". Jeff Votaw was one of our outstanding boys. Jeff went on in a good football career at Murray State Teachers College in Kentucky. And we continued on in basketball with real good teams.
We were talking, that was the end of part 1 there, Glenn. We're on tape side number 2, and we were talking about Bob Shawn.
Bob resigned, and they were succeeded by his B-team coach, Fred Huffman. Fred has made us a very fine basketball coach. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't have any height. where we used to have it to give away and even used it up on some of our subs. Now we just don't have any height at all. And of course, that's the way it goes. Athletic material goes in cycles, and we hope that the future will be a little brighter than it is at the present time.
Glenn, talking about athletics and coaching and everything, who would you say was your the most outstanding player that was under one of your teams or in the school that you were associated with as basketball?
I'd say the Yarnell twins.
Yeah. Now, how about football?
There too. Same with football.
Yeah.
Well, George Ross, I'd say, was better.
How about tennis? You also coached tennis. Who was probably your best tennis player?
Again, the Yarnell twins.
They were good tennis players also.
That's right. They won 28 straight matches.
Yeah. Well, is there anything interesting or unusual that we should comment on relative to your athletic and coaching career that you could think of?
Well, I'd express my appreciation for a fine group of boys to work with. It's all been fun. Mm-hmm. And also to wonderful parents, and Wabash has the most loyal fans of any town I know of.
Well, let's talk about your Culver career. How did you happen to get interested in working in Culver and what you did and so forth?
Well, I was director of Camp Tecumseh, a state YMCA camp, and I happened to be back in Wabash when the Black Horse Troop was here, and I met Colonel Robert Rosso, and he asked me to come to Culver the next summer, which I did, hoping to get a little bit of experience, and that was in 1933. And I started going there, and the first year I was there, I was a lieutenant. Next year I promoted to captain. I directed a division of 100 boys. And I was a division commander for 35 years. And then I was promoted to administration work. And I've been very fortunate to be in Culver because it is a great institution. And to have the experience of working with those men for the school, and again, a wonderful group of boys and parents.
Do you remember any unusual or outstanding situations or circumstances while you were at Culver? Or?
Well, yes, there are quite a few highlights. One of the highlights was that Culver had a bank robbery, and people from the school captured the bank robbers. And the gangsters in Chicago wrote threatening letters to Culver that they would kidnap a couple movie stars that we had, Hal Roach and Tim Holt. And we had to take turns of guarding their quarters with a shotgun. And I had a couple nights of that. I don't know that I shot anybody, but I shot up in the air, I guess.
They were making a movie at Culver at the time?
No, they were students there at the time. Their parents were movie actors.
Oh, I see, yes. Yeah. I presume that many of the famous people and personages sent their children to...
Yes, we've had, of course, at Culver everybody's treated like, wears the same clothes, kind of clothes, and same amount of spending money, so it's really not known, but we do have quite a few boys there whose parents are prominent in movies or in the government.
Did you have anything to do with athletics at Culver at all?
Yes, I did. When I was there in the summer school, of course, I didn't have, because I was division commander and we had coaches for all the teams. We have over 200 on the faculty there in the summer. In the winter school, I directed the athletics all below the sophomore level.
Did you see any of those boys go on to prominent athletic careers?
Well, and Culver doesn't have a lot of athletic stars. They everybody is an athlete there, and our intramural program overshadows the varsity program. And every boy there is a fair athlete, but there are not many great ones. We did have 4 on the Michigan football team at one time. Right offhand now, I don't think of any that were really great.
Let's talk about your married life, and let's talk about Grace, and where did you meet her, first of all?
Well,
first of all, what was her maiden name?
My wife's name was Grace Michael.
And where was she from?
She was from Bluffton, Indiana, same town. We graduated in high school together.
Okay, now tell me the story about how you met her and how you courted her.
Well, she was a very attractive girl, I thought so at least. And we played opposite parts in the class play and started dating at that time. Of course, we were very, very poor financially. My father never made over $60 a month as a one-room school teacher. So we both, going to school, we had to borrow money, and what we made in early teaching, we hardly carried us, and we never could afford to get married till quite a few years afterwards.
So you courted her on and off for years?
That's right.
And when did you get married?
1929.
Did she continue teaching then? Did Grace continue teaching?
When we first came to Wabash at that time, they wouldn't allow married people, women, to teach. There was a great oversupply of teachers. That was one way of using them up. And then Grace, of course, substituted. And then in about 1936, she did start teaching.
You never had any children, right?
No, sir, that's right.
And then, of course, you were living a full life and everything else, and then Grace became sick. And when was it, Glenn, that the final illness finally came on?
She was an ideal coach's wife and a counselor's wife, because in all my basketball career, I coached over 2,200 times. Many years I had over 100 games a year. And my practices took every evening from 3:30 till 9 o'clock. So not many wives would put up with that for as many years as she did. She was very good with the boys, with my teams, and entertained them a lot in our home. Same at Culver, not having anything to do. She counseled with the boys, and the boys loved her. And she had many, many friends, which at her death I received nearly 800 letters and tributes. And most of those were really from boys that she knew at Culver. She helped them out in many ways, as the boys there are away from home, and they need someone to talk to.
Did she go to all the games, Glenn?
Oh, yes. She loved basketball and football, and she attended all the games.
Was she a constructive critic?
Oh, no. She, we had some very outstanding games at times. She took it as hard as I did. One game I remember with Marion. I was very fortunate in my coaching career to beat Marion 4 times. And one of these games that we played with Marion, of course the people couldn't get in the gym. There was as many outside that night as there was inside. And we had Rex Anderson, Rich McClintock, Pete Risch, Bill Dunphy on our team that night, and we were 6 points behind, and we lost Rich McClintock And I told the boys, now they think we've lost our best player, and they'll start to coast a little, and we're going to beat them. And in about 2 minutes' time, we were around ahead of them. 4 minutes to go, we ahead of them 1 point. And we battled them and protected that lead of 1 point the rest of the game. The entire Wabash crowd stood up, and that time. And after the game, they just stood there. They didn't move. They were just so stunned. And I didn't have a dry thread on me, and Grace and we didn't sleep a wink that night.
Just reliving the game and the excitement and the
Reliving
pressure.
the game, that's right. We played it over many times.
Yeah. When did Grace get sick, Glenn?
Well, she became ill in February and passed away on December 1st.
Of
1969.
1969. How is it, as you look back now, and here we are sitting in the office of the Coolman Gymnasium, named in honor of both of you, and to my knowledge, there's only one other person in town, that would be Mr. Carpenter, for whom the school is made, that any of the public buildings have been named for. And how does it feel to be recognized in your own lifetime with this honor?
Well, I'm very modest about that. I feel that being at the right place at the right time would have something to do with it. This gym, of course, needed a name for the reason that it's in the junior high school. And it's used by the high school. So it made it always a little bit awkward to say Wabash High School in the junior high school gymnasium. And so the Board of Education I believe had a contest one time for a name for it, and didn't decide on it. And so that was one of the reasons that a name was decided. And I'm very thankful, but modest about it, and it could happen to dozens and dozens of people.
Did you ever have any failures in coaching? I mean, large, lasting failures, either with the students or with the
I never had
team?
I never had a bad team. No, I won about 70% of my games, 72% of my games.
What do you think makes an outstanding athlete, really?
Well,
You're looking at thousands of them.
what makes an outstanding athlete? Well, you have to have the physical characteristics for the sport that you're going to play.
But we see exceptions to that every day. We're right here in this year's basketball team. We're seeing exceptions to that.
That's right. They desire, they support of the community and the parents, and sacrifice that one needs to make, as in swimming or gymnastics, is one of our sports or two of our sports that take a lot of sacrifice. A boy must be willing to do it, and if he wants badly enough to do something, he could be a fair athlete.
Did you ever anticipate that there would be a tremendous explosion in athletics as there is today?
Well, it's always been popular. It doesn't seem to me that there's quite the interest in sports now that there was. I mean, there's varsity sports. A lot of people are playing golf and tennis and swimming and doing many things. But I don't think there's quite the interest in basketball, at least, that we used to have. Maybe wrong.
Yeah. I think you and I have discussed this before, and don't you feel that part of it is due to the fact that we're a mobile society and no attachment to...
There's so many competitive things to do.
Yes.
So many good things in the school, like the music department and speech department, scouting.
Yes. Looking back now, I usually ask everybody about the same questions. How about the Depression? How did the Depression affect your life personally?
Well, I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I know that was good for our boys and our 25-year reunions. And we bring in those boys that went through the Depression. It's fantastic what they're doing. And they get up and tell about it, and they praise the Depression for most of them. I'd hate to see anybody go through it again, because it really was pretty tough. And we didn't buy many suits or automobiles or then, but I wouldn't recommend it. But it's kind of fun to look back at now. I think I learned some things. And I'm sure those boys that came up in the Depression, well, we had boys in school here that didn't have a suit of clothes to go to the senior prom. They had to borrow from their older brothers or somebody that they knew. And we had one boy to go to college with $6 in his pocket. Now he makes over $100,000 a year. It's tremendous what some of these boys are doing who had such a hard time coming up in the Depression.
Yeah. Well, you personally, your salary was reduced during the...
Yes, I dropped from 1,900 to 1,000 in 1 year.
Yeah. Were you getting the cooperation all these years with the board and the superintendent and everything?
Yes, I've been fortunate to be under very good boards of education and superintendents. And the same way at Culver, I've always had good employers.
Did you, were you ever touched by the Ku Klux Klan in your lifetime, Glenn?
No. When I was at Converse, the Ku Klux Klan used to have meetings around there, out on farms or something like that. But I've never actually seen any of them.
Yeah. They never asked you to join? Did they ask you to join?
Never asked to join.
Yeah. How long did your parents live, Glenn? How old were you when your parents died?
Well, my mother died in she died when I was about 53 or 4. My father died when I was about 36, I guess.
And had they maintained good health and everything
Yes.
else? Up until their death. And that would make your mother approximately what age when she died?
She was 87 when she died. My father was 79.
79. Well, you come from a long line of long livers, then, don't you?
That's right.
Yeah. Do you ever get back to Bluffton now and run on to your old acquaintances and so forth?
I have a lot of friends in Bluffton. Most of my athletes that I've had remain friendly, and I see them quite frequently. Unfortunately, it's almost unbelievable how many of our athletes move someplace else. Looking through the list of Wabash has won 25 sectionals, and those sectional champions don't average 2 players who still live in Wabash, which is unfortunate that we've lost that many good people. Of course, maybe we've gotten somebody else's good people.
Yeah. What do you think the reason is?
I can't answer that. I've wondered myself, because there's work here to do, and I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think the kids are as strong and healthy as they were when you started coaching?
Well, I don't know. I think, of course, the boys used to have to work harder than they do now. And, of course, in Bluffton and Converse, I had quite a few farm boys. The young people are just good today as they ever were.
You would say today's game is much more demanding than yesterday's basketball game?
No, I wouldn't say so. The games used to be 20-minute halves, and now they're 16. And they do, the game is a little different. The main thing is the jump shot. Makes it a little hard to defense and runs the scores up. And I don't think there's any better basketball played now than, say, a team in 1934. I don't see how it could be. The coaches attended clinics. They knew just as much then as they do now. And the boys practiced every night. They played a good long schedule. And the only one thing, the game has speeded up somewhat. In the older days, we played a methodical game and with patterns. So I don't think the game is much better, except for your jump shot.
Did you ever coach any girls?
Yes, at one time, while I was at Converse, I had to take over the girls' team, too. And we had in Wabash an outstanding group of girls along 1929, 30, and 31. They were called the Snowballs. They called themselves state champions, which I think they were. And they were tremendous. They was good enough they could almost give our boys a pretty good game.
Did you know Mark Honeywell, Glenn?
Yes, I knew him very well.
What was the association there?
Well, when I came to Wabash, I met him early, and we became pretty good friends. And when the Honeywell building was built, I was there nearly every day for the first time they spaded a little bit of dirt. And I talked to him practically every day for a few minutes.
Relative to what?
Oh, just generally speaking, I did look up some catalogs and found the sources for some of his materials that he got. I bought the scoreboard.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did Mr. Honeywell, when he was building the foundation building we're talking about on Market Street, did you remember any humorous incidents that he was involved in relative to your relationship?
Well, I was amazed by the man because of his perfection. Everything had to be right or they tore it out. As one man I remember said, I don't know if I said this on the...
Go ahead.
One man I remember, come in, Ken.
Hi, Ken.
You know, George doesn't.
Come in.
I didn't ask you whether you wanted light or not.
We don't need light to talk.
Yeah, well, I don't put it on.
We can do it in the dark.
I don't put it on very much. The man from Rowan said, you know, it's pretty hard to be a Christian and work for Mr. Honeywell. Said, I've taken this out 9 times. And I remember that was a humorous incident. And he always wanted the best. When I ever ordered anything for him, he said, don't look for the cheapest, look for the best.
Did you know the first Mrs. Honeywell?
Slightly, yes.
And of course you know the second.
That's very well.
Mrs. Honeywell. Yeah. Was Mr. Honeywell interested in athletics?
Yes, he was. The first game we played in the Honeywell Gymnasium, he took a seat up in the corner. And, of course, every game at the Honeywell, it held 2,250 people. Every game at the Honeywell gym was a sellout. Not near all the people could get in that wanted to get in. I wish we could have crowds like that now. Well, Mr. Honeywell, our very first game, he took the corner seat upstairs. And I've never seen anyone so happy about anything in my life as he was that night.
What, did he attend the games regularly?
He did, down there.
Did he seem to enjoy basketball? Or
yes, he did. He knew basketball pretty well and sort of got a kick out of it. And we enjoyed having him here, having him at the games, and he watched the practice occasionally. We played down there then.
Yes, I remember. I'm going to ask you just run some names and make some general comments. Phil Eskew.
Well, Phil Eskew was a great one and is a great one now. He came to our school as just a regular teacher and worked his way up to the principalship. And then left here and went to Sullivan, Indiana as a superintendent and then to Huntington. And his present job as the commissioner of high school athletics. And he is, I would say, He's made for the job's made for him.
Now, Phil Magner, you've been...
Phil Magner was a very fine teacher here in the school, was very good for the boys. He was very creative, and they learned a lot. Phil's laboratory was filled with all kinds of devices, and we were sorry to lose him, but it was a promotion for him to go with the Honeywell plant.
How about Owen J. Neighbors?
Owen J. Neighbors was a very, very fine superintendent, was here for many, many years. He raised 4 fine basketball players. That was one of my hard things to do. They were small and not big enough to play on our team, although they grew to be 6-footers, most of them, after they got out of school. But I had to cut all 4 of those boys for the basketball squad, and that's one of the hardest jobs I ever had. Mm-hmm. There was my boss, who was very anxious that they play, but I had to cut them off.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. Sure hated to
How
do
about
it.
Leewell Carpenter?
Leewell Carpenter, of course, was another great one. He grew up in Wabash, was a very successful coach when he started out, and became the principal of the new the first junior high school here. And then when Mr. Darnell left, he came in as principal of the high school.
Do you have any hobbies now, Glenn?
Well, I have a lot of hobbies. I suppose sports, crafts of all kinds, ceramics, metal, weaving, are all hobbies.
Are you ever considering retiring?
I don't know. I don't know about that. Sometime it's inevitable, I guess.
Yeah. How long have you belonged to Rotary Club, Glenn?
I've belonged since 65.
Since 65. Have you enjoyed that association?
Yes, it's a wonderful group of people. They do a lot of good, and I'm proud to be included.
Yeah. You enjoy the meetings and the fellowship?
I do enjoy the meetings very much. I've learned a lot of things at Rotary, and the programs are so varied that it keeps you interested.
How do you like living alone?
Well, living alone is not good. It's very lonely. If you can keep yourself busy, you're all right. But if you can't, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah. You in pretty good health, Glenn?
Yes, I'm in excellent health, excepting a bad leg.
Sleep well? And all
Oh, yeah.
that. Sounds like a medical interview now. But do you have any reflections? We're getting right into the tape there. Do you have any reflections after coaching and being around children? And
No, I'd do the same thing again, and only regret that I can't be more active with the boys now that something which I always enjoyed in the past, and I sorry that I don't know them better.
Thanks, Glenn. And
I wasn't very well organized.
well, we put a whole hour of tape, and I'm going to take some of that information there, and we will put it in the file after we type it. And for the Wabash.
These, George, are the members of the sectional winners.
Okay.
Do you think it's worth it to
yeah.
anybody?
Yes, we'll put that in there.
All right.
And for Wabash Carnegie Public Library, this is